very much to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to come and help you give a presentation on competitive research proposal and grant writing in pharmacy. So, thank you very much, sir, for this opportunity. I also extend my thanks to Dr. Anthony Crasto, who has given my recommendation to serve for this particular 3 days online international workshop on mastering research proposal. So, good evening to every one of you present for this workshop. Uh, like Sir has given my introduction, I basically come from an academia and now moved into the corporate world. So, I have experience both in academic research as well as corporate research. I have personally written a lot of government grants, and we have got a lot of government grants, starting with the first grant of about 3.85 crores, which we got for setting up of the National Facility for Biopharmaceuticals, followed by a follow-on grant of about 6.85 crores for extending the facility and developing the facility. I have also received a a 15 crore grant for a project which is titled on developing diagnostics, early diagnostic tool for detection of pulmonary tuberculosis in the Indian subpopulation. We've also received a 60 crore grant for setting up of the biocluster in Mumbai, which is going to be the first of its kind in India, basically focused on bridging the gap from proof of concept studies to commercialization of projects. Also, along with this, I have received many private grants from the industries, starting with the grant amount of around 30 lakhs to all the way up to 3 crores. Many government and private sector grants I have received. And now currently I'm working in Biotex Life Solutions Private Limited, which is a herbal nutraceutical manufacturing and a dietary supplement manufacturing company based out of Hyderabad. My main focus of accepting this proposal and giving you an understanding of what grant writing is all about is basically to share the extensive knowledge that I have gained both in my academic and corporate sector with respect to funding opportunities which are available in India and outside. And why do we really fail in getting these funding opportunities, even though we are filled with knowledge, we are filled with experience, we are filled with, the enthusiasm of doing research. So, whatever I'm going to speak to you today is purely out of my experience. I believe this is the third day of the online workshop. The previous two speakers must have also spoken on the similar topic. So there will be a lot of things which are going to be very repetitive, boring, and cliche. My effort is to try to make this very dry and dull topic a little exciting and enthusiastic with you. What I'm going to request you is throughout this presentation, let's keep the interaction very open. I would love to hear your opinions, your doubts, your suggestions as we move across the presentation. And let's try to make it very interactive and let's see how best we can gain from each other today. I am also here to learn a lot of things from you. I was told that the majority of people who are going to be attending this workshop are faculty members. I understand that as faculty members, you all are under tremendous pressure of completing the syllabus, filing your examination paperwork, your documentation, your students, too much of administrative workload. But as faculty members, it is very, very essential that you take up the opportunity of writing grants and research because it is not only going to help the institution in terms of infrastructural development, but it will give you the confidence that whatever research or whatever knowledge you have has the capacity to get translated into something very constructive. So it's my sincere request to all the faculty members that no matter how small a research grant of maybe 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs is, please take efforts and your time out from your routine administrative schedules and try to focus and write at least one research grant every year so that it gives you the confidence of giving back to the society and getting appreciated for the knowledge and the expertise that you carry. So, having said this, I'm going to take you through what I'm going to be talking. That is the objectives of the sessions. So, we are going to be first talking about why research proposals and grants matter in pharmacy education. Why is it that as faculty members, you should write research proposals and grants when it comes from the education point of view? What is the grant landscape in India and worldwide with primary focus on what are the funding agencies available to us? What is the anatomy of writing a very strong research proposal? That means what are the key components of every research proposal that you should focus on? How do you write a very powerful objective methodology and how do you budget rightly a research proposal? What the reviewers are going to think when they are going to read your proposal. Now, this is the most essential part of research grant writing proposal. Most of the time, as individuals, we feel that whatever we are writing or whatever we are trying to do as a research topic holds a lot of significance. But that may not be the case with respect for the reviewers. The reviewers have a very different mindset. They have a very different perspective. They have a very different agenda when they're reviewing your proposals. And if you're not syncing with the agenda or if you're not in line with the agenda or the thought process of the reviewers, there is a very strong chance that your proposals will get rejected, even though the objective or the rationale is very good. So it is very important that you need to understand what the reviewers are thinking from the grant proposal point of view. What are the common mistakes that we usually do in writing a grant and how can you avoid these mistakes? And the practical roadmap and with a checklist for the faculty before submitting, I have just listed down certain key essential points that you're supposed to mandatorily check after every proposal is written so that you can submit the right kind of proposals. So, coming to why research grants are very important from pharmacy college point of view. Now, if you primarily look at, the prime objective, when you get a research grant, you get a lot of money for infrastructural development. Now, when I say infrastructural development, this usually forms the part of the capital research grant. In a research grant, the proposal, the budget, almost 60% money is allocated to capital grant. Now, why does 60% money is allocated to capital grant? Because the prime objective of any funding agency is to build the capacity of the institution. With the help of these research grants, you will be able to improvise your existing infrastructure, procure better instruments, have better access to facilities, enhance maybe upgrade your instruments, and in this way, grant given once will be having an impact for almost 10 years in an institution. Now, these research grants also have a second objective of supporting the projects. Now, let's be very honest. As faculty members, even once upon a time, I was in your shoes. I know the challenges we face in terms of, the salary component, and especially if you're in an unaided segment and you are a fresher and you do not have experience, the salary components are vastly compromised. And there is no motivation in performing your routine mundane tasks because of the salary component. Writing a research grant makes you eligible for extra aggregate income, which comes in the form of funds as as a salary component. So that is something that will give you the motivation to move ahead with your research and with your subject. The third most important thing is it improves the matrix of the college. Now, when I say matrix of the colleges, the more the research grants that a college receives, the better will be its NIRF ranking, NAC ranking, and then the better are the chances that the more you move up on the NIRF ranking, the better will be the visibility of the college. So obviously, it becomes a pride factor for the faculty to contribute directly and indirectly to enhancing the NIRF ranking. Fourth most important point is it enables collaboration. So as academicians, it is very difficult that we go out of our existing academic zone and meet people. Research grants are an opportunity where you can go and meet and collaborate and network with like-minded people who are working on similar fields or who are working on another field which is competitive or which is totally different, and exchange ideas and learn something new which otherwise would not have been possible in your routine tasks. Last but not the least, it creates an impact. Now, impact has both. It has a personal impact, as in you personally also grow. You also make a lot of credit points for yourself, which gives you better chance of having good promotions. It also gives you visibility in the scientific community zone where you are recognized by the number of patents that you hold or the number of publications that you hold or the number of translation molecules or technologies or devices that you have got into the market, or whether you have converted your research idea into your own startup and you have a commercial application, a translational application, an endpoint application of your research. So these are the major 5 reasons why it is very important as individuals or as faculty members, you should focus your some time of your life on grant writing. Um, is there anybody who wants to ask me any questions in whatever I have spoken? If so, please unmute yourself and ask, because when I'm presenting, I'm not able to see the screen of participants. I can only see the presentation. So if there is anything, please unmute yourself and ask, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay, now coming to the types of research grants, it's very, very important that we understand that grants are not just a one kind. There are many types of research grants, and based on our expertise, based on our interest, we can apply for different types of research grant. The first type of research grant that we talk about are called as intramural grants. Now, these grants are basically there within your university setup itself. So if you are from any particular state or if you are from any particular private university, then within the university, there is a grant budget which is allocated to you, which you can use by writing your application to your university research head and take this money. Now, this is usually called as a seed grant. Why we call this as a seed grant is because sometimes you may have a concept which is very, very good, but may not have practical application or may not be feasible when you go on writing for a bigger grant proposal. So it is always advisable that if you have a concept, to first take a seed grant, which is an intramural grant from your college or your university within itself. Take a small amount, maybe a few thousand rupees to less than 1 lakh rupees, and start some preliminary research, start some preliminary proof of concept development before you can actually go on to writing bigger grants. Coming to the second part, which is called as the extramural government grants. Now, these grants are available from government-sponsored funding agencies like DBT and DST, and these grants are usually larger in size, as in the ticket size for giving the grant is usually ranging between few lakhs to up to crores. Coming to extramural international grants, these are grant agencies which are present with international organizations like you have the NIH and the Wellcome Grant. Again, they have a very strict eligibility criteria for applications to these grant agencies, and you have to fulfill the application criteria before you can actually go on to apply for these grants. Then you have something called as industry or consultancy grant. Now, as faculty members, this is something that each one of you can do, because in this grant, you need not require any significant criteria for applications or long documentation work or long paperwork. All you need to do is network with industries which are within your sector, talk to them, share your expertise or your niche or core areas of expertise, ask them if you can join them as a consultant for a particular project, take your consultancy amount in a small portion for your research and use that for developing your academic credentials. This is something which is very, very easy, which all of you can do by talking to your pharmaceutical partners, biotech partners, or even startups and CROs. You have something called as capacity building schemes. Now, these capacity building schemes are not primarily just for research. They are for everything that can support your research. Like example, you have fellowship grants where you can just take money for just your stipend and have your research project going on funded from either a private company or a government organization. You have travel grants which will give you money to go and present your research proposals or your papers into international and national conferences. You also have training grants which will give you money to go and enroll for international training programs primarily focused on skill development and human resource development within your sector. So these are the various type of research grants that are available to you. In case you are not a very scientific person, if you are not a very uh, enthusiastic researcher, you can try for industry consultancy grants or capacity building grants. They can also help you in your overall personality development and your profile development. Now, which are the core funding agencies that are there within India itself? So this is a very, very busy slide which has all the information. So what I want all of you to do is you need not write down all this information. I'll be more than happy to share my presentation with you. It is nothing rocket science or nothing proprietary or nothing patentable that I'm speaking over here. It's something which is available in the public domain. All that I have done is consolidated the information with my expertise and experience, and I'm presenting it here. So I will share my presentation with Sir, and he can then forward it to you and share it with you if you want to have access to the information that I'm telling you. Because what I have tried to put is I have tried to give you the websites, the links for these, so that you need not hunt where to go and find information, the type of funding agencies that they do, and obviously the core important thing is the focus area. Now, not all of you may be having a single focus area. Some of you may be interested in technology. Some of you must be interested in, on tools. Some of you may be interested in health. Some of you may be interested in environment. So based on your area of focus, you can select the environment, the agencies which are listed over here to suit your needs. Now coming to the Indian funding scenario, like how do these departments basically fund? So we have a main research funding opportunity, which is with DBT Wellcome Trust Alliance, which is basically focused on giving fellowship and team grants. Now, what do we mean by team grants? Team grants is where you have more than one organization which is participating. Like, for example, the one principal investigator can be from your institute, the other one can be from a nearby pharmacy college. It may not necessarily be a pharmacy college. Suppose you are interested in developing an agri-based product, it could be the nearby agriculture college or a nearby agricultural company or an institute. So when there are more than one participating bodies, then it is DBT really welcomes that kind of funding opportunities. Now, if you come to BIRAC is a more focused funding opportunity with respect to, industry academia collaboration. Now, when we say industry academia collaboration, it means as a professor, you would be the academic partner and you need an industry partner who will be ready to support you in your research, or who will be ready to take up the commercialization of your research, or who will be ready to fund your research for further product development. So when you have an industry partner, you go for BIRAC. You go to Ministry of Ayush, very focused on environmental and Ayurvedic based research. So they have the extramural research grant. Then you have the pharmaceutical department, which is totally again on industry academic collaborations. Every state has its own science and technology council, which has research opportunities which are based on regional problems. So you can also approach your state science and technology council, and obviously your associated university, where you can go in for an institutional research. Now, coming to major international funding agencies, on the international funding agencies, we have NIH, which is majorly looking for hardcore fundamental research projects. They don't look at translational research, or they're not looking at anything which is commercialization of a product or a process or anything. They want basic research which is focused on understanding fundamentals of disease management or environment management or health management, depending on multiple criteria.
Okay.
You have Horizon Europe, which is again looking at international opportunities between India and UK. You have the Canadian Institute of Health Research Foundations, the CIHR, if you're looking at a collaborative partner from Canada. And then you have the NHMRC and then the AMET, which is focused on Japan and Australia. So depending on if you have collaborators in these countries, then you can use their funding opportunities to basically ask for funds. Now, how do you find a good fit funding call? Now, what I mean by a good fit funding call is how do you understand which call or which proposal or which agency is best for you? So these are the major 5 checkpoints that you should understand before applying to any funding agency. Major thing is you should be very well aware of the agency website. You should be thoroughly going through their website and understanding what is the core objectives. You should have a filtration criteria. Means you should be very clear whether you are focused on working on a disease model or a research model. What exactly do you want to do? So your filtration criteria have to be very, very clear. The next thing is you should be eligible for that project. So the next thing after filtration is what you check is your eligibility. And if you think you're eligible, then see the budget and the duration. Sometimes as professors, you may be retiring after 2 years and the project asks for minimum 3 to 4 years commitment. Then it is not sensible to write, because what you're going to do is you're going to invest time and money in writing the proposal, but eventually you will be rejected because you're not able to fit into the duration of the project proposal. So it will be a useless effort. After that, you do is expert match. Expert match is very, very important to understand whether you will have opportunities of collaboration with other experts who are in this field, and you have that kind of a tool or that kind of a niche where you will be able to talk to people and match with their expertise. So after having done that, what you do is you do the anatomy of a strong research proposal. Now, what do you mean by anatomy of a strong research proposal? That if you're supposed to develop this research proposal, what are the things that you need to keep in mind? Most important thing is you should have the summary of your proposal already in your head. It should have a very strong background. That means your research has to be very strong. Your literature review has to be very strong. It should have a problem statement. That means it should be able to focus on a current existing problem, which is trivial. And then it should have a rationale. Rationale means it should have a logic behind that problem. Now, having done this, once you have done this, the next thing that you do is you list down the objectives or the hypothesis, which will be how do you solve this problem in a stepwise way. After doing that, you will have a conceptual framework where you will have a complete flow plan on the paper that how you're going to move ahead in solving this problem step by step. Followed by the framework, you will have a detailed expertise, which is basically listing down the complete methodology of how you're going to solve the problem. After that, you will have the milestones. Now, this is very, very, very important because this is the place where the reviewers will actually catch you in the sense that the project will have a lot of goalposts, which has to be achieved one by one. Now you have to give timelines for this goalpost because every project comes with a duration of minimum 3 years, maximum 6 years. If your goalpost are not achieved within these 3 years, you can get a maximum relaxation of 6 months time, which can be used maximum 2 times. That means you can get a 1 year extension grant. But after that 1 year, what they will do is they will pull back the research money with interest. They will also blacklist you if you're not able to perform your objectives. So you have to be very, very realistic in giving the milestones, what you're going to do in the first 6 months, how you're going to do from 6 to 12 months, from 12 to 18 months, from 18 to 24 months, from 24 to 36 months, 36 to 48 months. All this thing has to be very critically written down, and they have to be very realistic, because this is the place where you will be caught by the reviewers. First thing. Budget and justification again becomes the second most critical point from the reviewing point of view, because budget is the most important criteria. How to budgetize your project, I will come back to it in the next slides. And then you have to justify the budget. That means, why are you taking this money? For what purpose are you taking this money? And how will this money contribute into the objective outcomes? Then you are supposed to talk about the team, the facilities, and your collaboration. Now, this is very, very important, because the next step after your objective, the reviewers will see who are the people working on this project. Now, this is very important, because the people working on this project should have previous experience, should have expertise, should have had some research work or groundwork in terms of application for that particular topic of interest. Suppose you are a statistician and you are writing a project on molecular biology, there is no correlation. There is 100% chance that your project will be rejected, no matter how strong that proposal is. So the PI has to fit with the concept proposal. If there is a mismatch in terms of expertise, then there is a good chance you may get rejected. So the best part is, whatever is your area of expertise, apply only in project grants in that particular area. If you're a pharmacologist, apply in the pharmacologist. If you're a toxicologist, apply in the toxicology department. If you are a statistician, then you have that kind of project approaches based on your expertise. So it's very important to have your expertise in place. The next is, what are the outcomes, and what are the impact that you're going to create, and how will this information be disseminated? That means they are very keen on knowing whether you'll be doing some publications or patenting, or you'll be having some trademarking or licensing or copywriting, whatever. The reviewers are very keen to know that. And the last part, which is what is the risk management and contingency plan, is very, very, very critical. What if you do not achieve the objective? Because as scientists, as researchers, what we are thinking right now is something very hypothetical. We think a lot of things, but the cells, the bacteria, the cell lines, the animals, the science, the chemicals may not behave as per our thought process. There is a good chance that they may fail our expectations in terms of the outcomes. Now, if that happens, what is your action plan? Is something that every reviewer is very, very keen to know. So, based on this, you will be clearing the first round of your grant writing proposal. Now, this is very important, because 99% of people get rejected at this phase itself. They are not able to clear this phase, because they are not very clear with these 10 points that I have listed over here. These 10 points may not be very extensively explained, but they have to be touched upon in your synopsis of the project, or in the project summary. If they do not, touch that, that is a very good chance that your project will get rejected. Now, why I'm saying that all these 10 points should be there in the project summary is because when a reviewer starts reviewing the project, when the application deadline closes, the reviewer has at least 150 plus applications which need to be reviewed. Now, he's not going to sit and see the complete project proposal. He will just read the summary and understand how well the investigator is prepared for his project proposal. And that is the place where he will do his first screening, or he will accept or reject you. Out of 100, I'm just giving you an estimate. It's not a, don't quote me as such, but out of 100 applications, only 6 to 7, maximum 10 applications clear this first round. Is because majority people do not tackle these 10 problems in the project summary the first page of the project, which is the most critical page for any grant writing or any project proposal. So make sure that all these 10 points are there for increasing your chances of getting approved in the first round of project proposal. Sir, I have a small request. Please keep me informed about how much time I have so that I don't overrun the time and I don't exceed the time. So please just let me know how much time I have left. Okay,
Yeah.
sir?
Yes, madam. I will inform. Yeah.
Thank you. So, next thing that we go into is just a minute. Yeah. Um, this is very important. That how do you take a topic for a fundable question? Now, you need a very fundable proposal. That means your proposal has to be very well structured, which I've already explained you. Those 10 points have to be there. It has to be a very researchable question. That means you should not be talking anything out of the box. It should be valid. It should be experimented. At least a part of it should be experimented before. You should be solving a very specific problem of the society. Now, this is very, very important. Why it is very important is because as scientists, our main focus is to do haphazard research just from publication point of view. Now, grant money will be given only to those people who will be able to answer specific questions of the society. Because that money which you are going to get is a money which is coming from taxpayers' contribution. And every taxpayer has the right to ask where his money is being used if his money is not being put into application for his benefit, either in terms of improving the society life or improving the health or improving the disease outcomes or providing better diagnostic opportunities of providing better detection tools of providing better diagnostic kits for disease management. If you're not able to answer these problems, nobody is interested in funding. If you just want to understand what is the big deal in finding a particular phytoconstituent from a plant and then does not have any practical application, you're not going to get funded no matter how good the plant is. And next thing is broad area of application. Now, this is very important. Broad area of application means it should be able to impact at least one or two places in the society. That means not only should it bring scientific impact, it should also improve the quality of life or contribute towards environment problem reduction or contributes towards sustainability or contribute towards health or contributes towards better disease management. So it should have multimodality application. That is something which as an individual you will have to really brainstorm when you're thinking of a particular problem. So these are something which is very important. Based on these four things only, you should choose your topic. It should have a broad area of application. It should solve a particular problem. It should be a researchable question and it should be fundable. So people should be willing to give you money for this kind of a work. So that's how a good topic gets approved for a research. Now coming to writing a strong rationale or a background. Now when you are writing the background,
More 45 minutes. You have more.
45 minutes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So what you're going to do about writing the background and the rationale is you have to identify the disease burden. Like if you're, for example, if you're talking about cancer, if you're talking about HIV, or if you're talking about tuberculosis, you have to know what is the burden. You have to know the statistics of your disease very, very clearly. What are the number of infected individuals in India? What is the percentage? How many males? How many females? Which is the social group that is affected? Internationally, what is the strata? Where are they present? How are they present? This statistical information is very, very important. Why is it very important? Because this is the number that is going to give the impact of why your research is significant or why this research needs to be done because of the number of people dying every year or the number of people getting infected every year or the number of kids being, infected every year. So this is very, very important. It adds value. It adds weightage, the statistical information, the burden. Summarize the current care means you have to give what is the current, treatment protocols that are being followed or current technologies available. Now, why this is important is because you want to show the funding agency that you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not doing something which is already done. You are either adding value to the existing technology, or you are making a new technology all over itself, which is going to be very, very good. So current care or the current market status is very, very important. Now, after doing that, the next step will be highlight the limitations. Now, when you say that you already have a technology or a product or a process or an instrument which is solving the particular problem, but it is not able to do what is required because of one, two, three, four reasons, and that is where your contribution becomes significant. So, unless and until you highlight the limitations of existing strategy or existing things, it will be very difficult to justify why you want to do research. Now, after highlighting the limitation, the next part is that limitation is coming because of the knowledge gap. Either the process is not very well understood, or the management is not very well understood, or the technology is not very well understood, or there is no direct application with the public or the society. So that knowledge gap has to be focused on. And then after doing these four things, you say that yes, now this is the problem. This is the reason why it has not happened. And this is how I'm going to contribute to it to make it a shade better than what it is right now. Now, all this picture has to come in the background of your research proposal. If it does not come in the background of your research proposal, it is very evident to the funding agency that you have not understood what you are writing your grant. So this is very, very critical. Once you receive this presentation, please note down these points in front of you when you're writing your research grant. Very essential. Next, we come to writing the objective and the hypothesis of the research grant. Now, there is this word we call it as, write it as SMART objectives. SMART comes from these 5 words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Objectives have to be very specific. So SMART S stands for specific objectives. You have to be very, very clear in what you're doing. You can't say that I am developing a in vitro or a herbal formulation for treatment of anti-inflammatory disorders. No, you cannot talk like this, because anti-inflammatory disorders, the whole world is talking about anti-inflammatory disorders. But if you're developing a herbal formulation critically for inflammation coming from either diabetes or cancer or tuberculosis, because every inflammatory pathway is different. Even though all inflammations lead to a disease, not all diseases have the same inflammatory pathways. So the more specific you are, the more bird's eye view you have about the particular objective, the better are the chances of your outcomes in terms of acceptance of the proposal. So make your objectives very specific. The M in the SMART stands for measurable outcomes. When we say measurable outcomes, you can't just say that, okay, I'm going to improve the pain of the individual or his pain will disappear. No, that pain is a very, very generalized term. When we talk about measurable outcomes, we want quantification, that the score will come down from 9 to 7, or it will come down to 6, or the CRP levels will come down from X to Y. We need quantitative information that will critically say the effectiveness of your research, whether it is happening or it is not happening. It may happen, it could have happened. No, we cannot talk vague. We need measurable outcomes. Now, in A, the SMART A stands for achievable goals. Now, when we say achievable goals, means you have to be very, very realistic and they should be easily achievable. Now, when I say like this, you can't just say that, okay, I will make a stage 3 cancer disappear within 6 months. It is practically not possible for a stage 3 or a stage 4 cancer to disappear within 6 months. So these are very hypothetical, over exaggerated statements. We can say that we will see significant reduction, at least 50% after 6 months of treatment. This is possible if the patient is taken care, if the drug is working, if the efficacy of the molecule is there, if the bioavailability is there, if the PKPD studies have been done very well, if the ADME studies have been done very well. These are achievable goals. So whatever you do, whatever you write, have to be very realistic. Now, the R in SMART stands for relevant research. Now, when we say relevant research, means it should have a significance in terms of society. So, whatever you're doing should be a very, very relevant outcome. Okay. And it should be time bound. So the SMART T stands for time bound. Time bound means you should have clear cut deadlines that for 6 months I'll be able to achieve this. Next 6 months is this. Next 6 months is this. So everything has to be time bound and measurable. The moment you have your objectives defined on these SMART guidelines, it gives information to the reviewer that you are very clear with what you want to do and how you want to do and when you want to do. So how, when, where, what, and why. These 5 questions get answered when you have a very clear objective or hypothesis which is written within your project proposal. Okay. Now coming to the methodology overview, how do you write a method for your project? Now this method basically should have, I'm not saying compulsorily, but it should have these ideas very clear in place. It should have a study design. When we say about study design, means you should be very critically say whether you'll be doing an in vitro analysis or you'll be doing an in vivo analysis, or you'll be going for a clinical study, whether it's pre-clinical or a clinical study. So that has to be very specifically mentioned. You have to talk a lot about your samples and the environmental setting of your samples. That means whether you'll be working on patients, whether you'll be working on animals, whether you'll be working on cell lines, whether you'll be working with data sets, whether you'll be doing meta-analysis. Samples have to be very, very clearly defined in in your methodology. Coming to the procedures and interventions, whether you're going to be developing SOPs or whether you're going to be developing assays or whether you're going to be using interventional therapies, interventional, protocols, those have to be very, very clearly mentioned. Whether you'll be following the pharmacopoeial guidelines, or whether you'll be following any OECD guidelines, whether you'll be following any ISO guidelines, that shows your depth and commitment towards your research. Now, both measures and endpoints, you have to very critically say what is going to be your primary outcome, what is the most important thing, critical thing that you're going to achieve out of your research. And then you have to list about secondary outcomes, which can talk about a lot of other things like the environmental impact, or it can talk about the society impact, or it can talk about contribution towards skill development, human resource development, contribution towards, scientific data and data sets or anything. So you have to very critically talk about primary objective followed by secondary objective. Your research methodology should mandatorily have a statistical analysis panel. Any data which is not presented statistically or which does not involve a statistical outcome is usually not rejected or not accepted by public. So you should mention the statistical sets you are using, the software that you will be using for your analysis, the sample size, whether you'll be using a large volume, small volume sample size, whether what kind of studies you'll be doing should be very clearly mentioned. And last but not the least, if you are using any ethical and regulatory approvals like your internal ethics committee approvals or CTRI approvals or CPC-SCA, if you're using animal studies, or if you're using a clinical intervention studies, then your approvals have to be there in place. Now, when your methodology mentions all these sample sets in any order, but having complete data, it just gives the reviewer the understanding that you have done your homework thoroughly. You're not just speaking out of the blue, or you don't know that you will start the research, but you don't know where to take it. That is not the thing. You have the clarity of the picture. It's basically just like closing your eyes and imagining a movie. You have to imagine the start of the movie, the body of the movie, the climax of the movie, and how the movie is going to end. Now, when you have that clarity in front of you, then it becomes very easy to write this research proposal and even more easier to get the grant. Okay, going to the next one. What are the team facilities and risk managements that you should be doing? You should have a very good team for a project. Now, this team means you should have a good PI, you should have a good co-PI, and they should be from different fields. That means when we are talking about it's basically having a group of biochemists, having a group of toxicologists, having a group of organic or inorganic chemists who will do data research on the molecules, statisticians, mathematicians, biologists, sometimes even designers are very, very important part of your group. So if you have designers or data management people, even they contribute significant towards the designing, the layout, the imagery of your project and the proposals, everything. So having a very good team is the most prime important criteria uh, for for a good research proposal. Institutional facilities, it's a very, very, very important that you highlight from where you're doing the research, how important that institute is in terms of its credibility, in terms of its infrastructure, in terms of the facilities, in terms of the associations, the kind of collaborations they have with other institutes, other companies, other hospitals, other academic institute, other universities, national, international. The more you mention that, it adds more value that you're doing it from a prestigious or a reputed organization. And usually, if not up to yours, but you will try to live up to the reputation of your organization. So that adds a lot of value. Previous work, like I told you, please do not write grants or do not write applications which are not within your zone of expertise. Doing this will just exhaust you of the time, energy, and resources, and you will not get any outcome. So it's very important that your previous work has added value. Now, if you say that previous work के लिए हमारे पास experience नहीं है, then that is exactly when I told you the intramural research grants start taking few thousand rupees, say 25,000 rupees, 35,000 rupees from your college management or your university and start doing the preliminary research work. Everything that you will do in the initial levels will add value to your overall CV or your overall resume when you are writing an application for this grant. Project risks, very important. You have to analyze what is going to happen if this project fails, because failure analysis is the most important part of the project management. It will tell the funding agencies what it stands to lose if it doesn't fund you, okay, and what it stands to gain if it funds you. So that has to be very clearly written in your project proposal. And obviously the contingency plan, you should show contingency is basically that extra money which is usually for unaccounted expenses, means you do not know where it is going to be used, but can be kept like a kitty money or like a spare money, which can be used in terms if any bracket of funding is getting exhausted. Usually contingency which they grant is only 10% of the total project value. So if your total project is about 10 lakhs, then you will allocate 1 lakh for contingency and 9 lakhs for the remaining project proposal. So that's how you budget it out. So this is how you write a strong objective. Sorry?
More 30 minutes.
Yes, sir. I think I will take around 20 minutes more and then we will have a Q&A. Yeah. So how do you write a small objective is what I have given you some examples of here, like formulation development. If you're writing a proposal, then you have to write about the pre-formulation, the excipient steering, the design of experiments. If you're having characteristic studies, then you should talk about release kinetic stability, mechanistic models. These are just little examples which I have given over here, which talks about how to strongly objectify your research proposals. Now, this is a methodology template for your students if you want, like for study design, what type of study are you doing? Are you doing a randomized trial, a factorial DOE, and study site and population material? What site are you choosing? What material you are using? Sampling methods, interventions. So this is just like, I have just added the pointers, which you can use it as templates for your students to ask questions before you start writing the proposal. Now, budget. What reviewers really look for in terms of the budget in your proposal. Now, budget has to be only in this head. You cannot have an extra head or you cannot delete any head from these existing. So you need to have manpower very critically written over there. Now, manpower के लिए जो salary component होता है, you will have to look at the website of the funding agencies. Usually, they always mention what is the JRF, SRF salaries that is sanctioned along with the HRA requirements is always given. If there is nothing given, then there is a government memorandum which is issued by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. In that memorandum, you can find the slabs of the funding opportunities or the stipend for junior research, senior research, RA grade 1, RA grade 2, RA grade 3, depending on how your project is, whatever manpower you want, you need to allocate a budget for that man. Now, consumables, it will have an extensive list of consumables, both in terms of chemicals, both in terms of plasticware, both in terms of, if there is any columns or if there are any gels or anything that will go as a part of a recurring item in your research has to be clearly split. Animals, if you're using any animals, mice, white star mice, nude mice, kid mice, you need to give a proper budgeting to those things because this also is very mandatory for your CPCSE approvals for your trials. Then you have to minor equipments usually don't form a part of the capital investment. Investments are for equipments which are above 10 lakh rupees. Minor equipments can be anything between 2 to 3 lakh of rupees. If you want to buy that, you can give them as a special minor equipment grant within your recurring or within your non-capital grant. You can put it there. You should allocate some money for travel. This travel may not be a travel to conferences that if you want to, you can definitely put that. But this could also mean traveling to meet the funding agency for its review activities. Now, every funding agency will ask you to come once in 6 months or maybe once in a year to come and present whatever you have done, whatever research. So for that, you should allocate a budget and take the budget from the grant itself. So, and plus allocate another 30-40% for international conferences or for paper presentations within the country or even outside the country. Contingency, like I told you, emergency fund can be used for anything, but it should not be more than 10% of the total project grant. And overheads, these are general administrative operational costs. Like, for example, you want to file a patent, so patent filing could come under a overhead cost. Paper publication could come under a overhead cost. Repair and maintenance of an existing equipment could come as an overhead cost. That also should not exceed more than 10 to 15% of your total project grant. So you need to, this is how you basically budget out your proposal. So these are again some examples. One, GRF or SRF plus a project assistant as per the agency norms. You can write it. Consumables, which includes chemicals, reagents, kits, packaging, disposables, animals, procuring them, maintaining them. Minor equipments, like if you want a software license or if you want to buy small accessories like a rotor or a comb or maybe a probe or anything, you can always put it as minor equipment. Travel could be field visits for sample collections. Collaborator meetings, like I told you, to go to the funding agencies and meet them once every year, twice every year. And overhead in institutional charge, you can look after the guidelines which are getting given by the agencies. They very clearly sometimes mention how much institutional charges you are allowed to take. Now, very important is how reviewers think, or basically what is the evaluation criteria of the grant. Now, basically the evaluation criteria is under the 6 headings only. The first thing that they see is how well you are justifying your funding. Whatever money you have asked, what is the justification for that money? How your funding is getting allocated? How you're going to manage the resources, that is human resource as well as technical resource. Now, after the justification, is this having value for money? Is what the funding agency will always think. Value for money means the whatever is going to be the outcome of the research, will it have a significant societal impact? If that impact is not coming, then that there is no value for money, no matter how good your research is. So value for money is very, very important. Impact is, again, they're going to see how much significant impact you're going to talk. Now, if you're in COVID times, everybody got money for doing the research on COVID. If anybody would have submitted a research grant for diabetes management or cardiovascular management during COVID grant, no matter how good the project would have been, the government would not have given them the money. Why? Because it was not impacting the society at that point of time. So today, if you read a lot of review articles, or if you look at the news also very critically, government has very clearly told what is the problems that we are facing. So we have antimicrobial resistance, which is a big problem. We have diabetes, which is a big problem. We have hypertension, which is a big problem. Cancer has always been a problem. So these thrust areas or impact areas have already been defined by the government. So your project has to get aligned with this impact on these criteria. Only then the valuations or then the acceptability comes. After having impacted all these things, value for money, that justification for money, and impact in the society, then the reviewers come on what is the novelty, what is the newness, what is the innovativeness, what is the novelness that you are getting with your existing proposal. What is the value addition? Now, this novelness need not always be something new. It could also mean improvisation in the existing procedures. Like, for example, if there is an interventional therapy which is taking 6 hours, if by your research the time can be reduced to 45 minutes, then that is novel. It may not be a new technology altogether. It can be just alteration of an existing technology which could add value into the society. So novelness has to come out very clearly. Institutional capability is something that they very strongly think. Suppose your institution doesn't have the bandwidth of supporting that kind of a heavy research or that kind of a research technology, then the whole exercise becomes immaterial. Uh, the team has to be very strong. If your expertise is not there and you're going to be always relying on some external source or an external agency, then obviously the outcome will be very erratic and it will be totally dependent on other criteria. Institutional capability is something which is very, very important. And obviously what kind of methods you're using. So the reviewer, when he looks at your projects, he will look at the project from left to right, how well you're justifying your funding, whether it is value for money, whether you're creating an impact in the society, whether there is any novelty, whether you're capable of doing the research you had your institution, and whether you have had a very foolproof methodology. They do not see anything beyond these 6 points. Rest all is secondary. Means it will come only when they want to reject you, not otherwise. So now coming to the common mistakes that most of the people make in research proposal. The first mistake that people do is a poor fit. The grant application, the call for proposal does not match with what you have written. So this is the very, very common mistake that most of us do. We have to read not once, not twice, at least 10 times the call for proposal documents. It should be by hearted on the tip of your tongue, because the more you read it, the more you will understand what the proposal is asking you to do. Usually people just read one or two words and say, ha, ye to main kar lunga, or ha, this is the part of what I'm doing. And then we'll end up doing a disastrous work because it doesn't fit with what the funding agency is asked. So this is one common mistake. Vague objectives. We are not very clear with what we want to do, how we want to do, where we are going to do it. So how, what, when, where has to be very, very clear. The methodology is sometimes very weak. People don't do extensive literature review. They don't have clarity and understanding what are the existing technologies or ongoing technologies and what value addition they want to do. Budget issues, I told you, they can calculate the budget inappropriately. They sometimes put a lot of money in the manpower and hardly any money in the infrastructure and other requirements. So government is not interested in giving money to people. They're interested in developing the institution. They're interested in adding value to the institution. So keep the 60-40 ratio, 60% towards institutional development, 40% towards research consumables and manpower. If you budget it out well, then there is good justification, good chances that you will get the money. Ethical concerns, most of the time as researchers, scientists, we ignore this part. We do not give attention to this part, and this becomes one of the significant criteria is why we lose out the money on research. Sloppy writing, the researchers, the grant application specialists, they hate sloppy writing. They do not like casual, non-scientific way of writing. So please proofread your project proposal, read it 10 times, get it peer review, give it to 10 people from your community, scientific community, ask them to read it, reread it, and make the changes so that it looks scientifically clean and Hello. Deadline rush. We always get up at the last minute to write for the grant proposal, because of which we are not able to justify. Grant writing is a very, very tedious and a cumbersome process and requires efforts every day over months. So please do not sit writing for a grant 10 days before the deadline. It's my sincere and genuine request. Start early, finish early, because what happens is, even if you finish at the last minute, there are so many people who are sitting online to submit the proposal. The internet gets jammed, the site conks off, the site collapses because of too much of rush, and then you are not able to upload your documents, which is again a severe waste of energy and resource, the efforts that you've put so much throughout your last month or a 1.5 months, whatever is the time. So these are the mistakes which all of you should avoid while writing a research proposal. How to avoid these mistakes? You start with the call text. Begin. That's what I said. Call text means please read the document of the grant proposal not once, not twice, at least 10 times. This is very, very important, because every time you read, you will understand a new concept of the grant, which will make your understanding very, very clear. Peer review, like I told you, please share with your colleagues, ask your students to read it, ask your faculties to read it, ask your colleagues to read it. Okay, use a checklist, have a very clear checklist in front of you, making sure that you have, addressed every problem that has been asked. Proofread, no spelling mistakes, no grammatical errors, no typing errors, no comma, and full stop errors. This is something that they don't like. Prepare your documents well in advance. A lot of documentation goes into grant writing: your CVs, your clearance certificates, your licenses, your approvals, your institutional information, audited bank statements. Lot of data goes. So make sure your documents are already there and they're ready. And resubmit if rejected. Please never leave any grant without justification. If you've been rejected, please write to the funding agency and ask them the reason for rejection, why it's been rejected, and try to reapply on a similar grant line when it comes. Do not be dejected. Do not feel bad about it, because these are all the learning steps towards success. You need to pass through each of this fire test, litmus test, before you can actually go and get the first grant, which is going to be there for your life. Okay, so this is like a small checklist which I've made. You can just check whether you have done everything, whether you have a review process, whether you have documentation. So you start with the alignment check, whether everything has been aligned properly as per the project. Problem definition has been given, objective has been set, methodology has been set, budget has been given, ethical compliance mentioned, documentation done, and peer review. So all these checklists you have to keep doing one by one, and keep taking marks, so that you know that you are just ready for submissions. So these are like the checklist for submissions. Okay, so that's all I had to talk with respect to the grant writing and research writing proposal. If there is anything that you want to ask, I'll be more than happy to answer. This is the details of my company. If any one of you is interested to know what our company is all about and what we do, I'll be more than happy to answer. So that brings me to the end. So I'm going to stop sharing the presentation so that.
Yeah. I request you, Ron, can you make your camera on? Just so I want to take one screenshot with everyone.
So that, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for making camera on. So I just take small screen. Yeah. With the Thank you. Now you can ask question to madam. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. So is there anybody who wants to ask any questions or would be interested in knowing more details? I'll be more than happy. Yes, Mr. Mustaq Sheikh. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, good. To start.
Yes.
I have one question. For example, if I'm doing a project at my institute would be definitely incurring a lot of cost into the project, like electricity and usage of the instruments. So where can actually budget all these expenses?
All the institutional experiments in terms of the electricity, if they are giving extra manpower, you can put it in the overhead cost. I told you overhead cost, which is 10%. Usually that money as it is goes to the institution. So you can allocate a budget for your institution in the overhead cost.
Does it come with some percentage saving?
Should not be more than 10 to 15% of the total budget.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome. Yeah. Yes, Harita Desai, I have seen your hand raised. Can you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yes, good evening, ma'am. It
Good
was a very interesting session. Ma'am, is there any reference site where we can get reference proposals which we can give us idea about how we can write the hypothesis and we can go in the flow of the flow which you have mentioned, like different websites, like different sites have their different criteria. So
Yes. So, first of all, there is no such website available where you can get draft project proposals available for your research grants. There is no such website. However, whatever I have spoken is a skeletal framework for any research writing agency, any research agency. So you can use the templates that I have given you with the description of what has to go in each point, so that you can understand how to write the research proposal. Now, basically, this is an experience, Harita. Every time you will write it, every time you will improvise yourself. You will automatically realize you are becoming better and better with each writing activity. Uh, if, rather than going for an online template, it is always good that you write your proposal and get it proofread from your colleagues. Your colleagues are your best critic. They are the best people who will evaluate your proposal and give you an idea about how well it is being written and not. Nonetheless, last but not the least, you can always use ChatGPT to evaluate whether your work has been done or no. It will give you a feedback of your research proposal. But again, it is an artificial intelligence. How much can you rely on it is my question, but it is totally your choice.
okay, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah, most welcome.
Madam,
Anyone else?
yeah, I have a question, madam.
Yes, sir.
Now Springwell Private Limited is planning to have some startup related funding. Can you give some idea for research related grant for as an organization? This is private company.
So what information are you looking at from me, sir?
For startup, because we want to associate with ICT as we are planning to be an incubator for this company, and we are looking for some funding for a research purpose for diabetes, especially for diabetes. So how we proceed as this startup with this?
When you
organization?
started, the best place where you can really position yourself is with BIRAC, because BIRAC supports a startup ecosystem very much, and the BIPP, PACE, and big. All these three grants are for the startup ecosystem only. So you can write into BIRAC and see how well you can position yourself for the grant from BIRAC. But you have to be very clear, like I told you, whether a startup or an individual or a researcher or a professor, your grant proposal has to be like a story. If you're able to do that, you can easily get the grant. So you're looking at a government grant or you're looking at a private grant?
I am looking for government grant, madam. Yeah.
Government grant, what I have spoken is absolutely right. If you're looking for a private grant, they do not